How much of the narrative that is in our news today has been spoon-fed to me by people who are super pro-Israel at all costs? The Fox News of yesteryear, which just has a knee-jerk response to things like Israel, to things like war, is out of touch with today's young Republicans.
Yes.
Today's under 50-year-old conservative men and women are over that bullshit. I don't know what faction of that group we're ticking off right now with our behavior and going in there and saying the oil's now ours, we're gonna sell it, we'll give you a piece of it, but we're taking it. So I really do worry about unintended consequences, and I object to empire. I much prefer the way we started with the original George Washington, let's avoid foreign entanglements, let's not cozy up too much to any one country, let's enjoy the beautiful blessing of the two huge oceans on either side. I don't want to have to take care of Venezuela. I really don't.
During an interview with the New York Times, President Donald Trump says that we could be taking care of Venezuela for years. Now, he referred to it as overseeing Venezuela. So I don't want anyone to mistake this as the US actually looking out for the people of Venezuela. But Megyn Kelly is right to be concerned here. But before we get to the details of what Trump has to say about all of this and more of what Kelly had to say about her view of what the Trump administration just did in Venezuela, Cenk, your 2 cents?
Yes. Amazing developments, because now it started with Epstein files, then it went to Israel. Now it's gone to, wait, are we sure we should attack Venezuela? And that is the two biggest right-wing hosts in the country saying that. Wow, wait till you see the rest.
Yep. Now I want to talk a little bit about President Trump's comments about what just went down in Venezuela. He's speaking to reporters over at the New York Times. And this is what he had to say about our involvement with Venezuela. How long is the US going to be in this entanglement? Well, here's what Trump had to say. Only time will tell, he said, when asked how long the administration will demand direct oversight of the South American nation with the hovering threat of American military action from an armada just offshore. So Trump's comments came hours after Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke to Congress, in which he outlined a plan to take control of selling Venezuela's oil indefinitely. And there's allegedly some sort of 3-phase plan that the Trump administration is pursuing here. Now, here's what Trump had to say about that. We will rebuild it in a very profitable way. And what he's referring to there is rebuilding the infrastructure in order to allow for American oil companies to extract the crude oil in Venezuela. So that's what he's talking about. And when he says we, he means us, the US taxpayers, we're gonna pay to build that infrastructure on behalf of the oil companies who will then profit from it. The rest of his statement was, we're going to be using oil and we're going to be taking oil. We're getting oil prices down and we're going to be giving money to Venezuela, which they desperately need. I wouldn't hold my breath on the giving money to Venezuela part, but who knows, maybe. Now, during the interview, Trump did not give a precise time range for how long the US would remain in Venezuela's, essentially serve as Venezuela's political overlord. And so he said, would it take 3 months, 6 months, a year, longer? Trump's response was, I would say much longer. Trump appeared far more focused on the capture mission than the details of how to navigate Venezuela's future. He declined to say what might prompt him to put American forces on the ground in the country. He simply said, quote, I wouldn't want to tell you that. I'm sure you wouldn't. Now, would he send troops to Venezuela if the current regime, it's still the same regime, just a different leader, decided to block him from access to their oil? What if they refuse to kick out Russian and Chinese personnel, as the Trump administration has been demanding of the regime? He says, I can't tell you that. I really wouldn't want to tell you that, but they're treating us with great respect. As you know, we're getting along very well with the administration that is there right now. And by the way, I was listening to the Drop Site show, and in it, they were talking about how there were definitely a few officials within the current Venezuelan regime who was essentially defected in a way to make it easier for the Trump administration to capture Nicolas Maduro. And just yesterday, Trump demanded more money from the Pentagon as if we're not already spending a tremendous amount on military spending. So this is what he posted on Truth Social. After long and difficult negotiations with senators, congressmen, secretaries, and other political representatives, I have determined that for the good of our country, especially in these very troubled and dangerous times, our military budget for the year 2027 should not be $1 trillion, which was insane enough. He wants it to be $1.5 trillion, and then claims this will allow us to build the dream military that we have long been entitled to. Remember when they were pretending like they were going to cut the Pentagon budget? You know, all that waste, fraud, and abuse when it comes to an arm of the federal government that has failed every single audit imaginable. It's just incredible.
Yeah. So it was at 850 billion. They added 150 billion already. These are the people who said they'd cut the Pentagon and waste, fraud, and abuse. Enormous liars, the Trump administration. Even their own voters wanted cuts. Now they're saying, oh, no, we're gonna double it. We're gonna take it from, around 800 to now 1.5 trillion. What is that? Okay, so the most fraudulent, the biggest waste there is in the Pentagon. They can't ever pass an audit. They say half the money they get, they don't know where it goes. I don't know where it is. What do you mean you don't know where it is? So now we're not gonna know where $750 billion is. They're never gonna pass an audit. It's a robbery, an absolute robbery. And are we doing it for defense? No, they literally changed the name of the Defense Department, the Department of War, from the guy who ran as anti-war. Right now, they're having conversations, very literal, and they're saying it publicly about invading 5 more countries. So Venezuela we just did. So they're saying we got to go back to Iran. We got to do Greenland. And Trump's saying, yes, no, I am seriously considering military options in Greenland. We're not trolling anymore. This isn't trolling, this isn't joking. Actually thinking about invading a fellow NATO country. Have we lost track of how insane that is? How ludicrous that is? I know the great majority of the country hasn't, but apparently some have. And also Colombia, Mexico, and Cuba, anti-war, and constantly like, I didn't win a peace prize, I should win a peace prize. And I'm gonna kill them, and I'm gonna murder them, and I'm gonna attack them, and everything is mine. And he says about the oil that all the proceeds are gonna run through him. Whoa, what is that? What do you mean they're gonna run through you?
We know what that is. We know damn well what that is. It's amazing. Give me the loot. That's who Trump is, okay? Now I wanna get back to Megyn Kelly briefly because she said some other really fascinating things. I wanna give you her full thoughts on her view of what the Trump administration is up to in Venezuela. She did elaborate on Tucker Carlson's show. Let's take a look.
You said right after Maduro got grabbed that you weren't exactly sure, you were skeptical. What are your views of it now?
Yeah, still skeptical. I said, I'm not on a green light posture on this. I'm not on a red light, I'm on a yellow. And I don't love it, I gotta be honest. I, first of all, would prefer we use our military defensively and not offensively, which may be anachronistic, but I'm not really in the mindset at all, especially now with 3 kids who are 2 out of 3 in their teens, of being super bellicose in our language or our approach to the world. And I don't really see this as necessary. I don't see this one as necessary. I understand what Trump is saying is the reason, and I too appreciate the honesty. I actually appreciate that we're not cloaking it in democracy. Like we wanted the oil. He was really explicit. And we didn't want them playing footsie with China and Iran and Cuba. Okay, so at least he's being honest about it. But I worry very much about unintended consequences.
Yeah, I mean, the unintended consequences typically do happen after these types of military operations, and it remains to be seen what the consequences will be moving forward. We don't really know what Trump's plan is. The Trump administration isn't really clear about what they intend to do moving forward, and so, and by the way, it does seem like increasingly more and more people are getting frustrated with this situation, not just the anti-war crowd, but Cenk, also the neoliberal crowd who's upset that Trump didn't carry out what they really wanted, which was a full-blown regime change. And so it is interesting to see he is getting jabbed from multiple sides right now. I don't fall in line at all with the neoliberal camp. I don't think that we should be in the business of regime change. And oftentimes these regime change wars leads to a power vacuum, and oftentimes you could end up with a regime that's even worse than the one that you're trying to get rid of. So I actually commend Megyn Kelly for wanting to be a lot more cautious on her views following this military operation in Venezuela. And I want to go to one more video before I hear your thoughts, because if you're wondering, well, wasn't Megyn Kelly one of the Fox anchors that was like totally cheerleading the war in Iraq and other, regime change wars in past administrations? Yeah, you're right about that. But it turns out that she's somewhat remorseful, and so is Tucker Carlson. Take a look.
So that's, I guess, my concern. If like all of a sudden you become permanently at war, your own population in some ways becomes the government's enemy, I've noticed.
Well, look, we were, in a way, a part of that during the Iraq war.
Yeah, I know.
At Fox, right? Like, they didn't allow, and we didn't allow people who were criticizing the war a platform. We mocked them and made fun of them because I think we thought it was our duty to defend the war. And I see Fox News doing that right now. There's not really a skeptical voice over there about what we're doing in Venezuela. And I'm fine with the people who support the Venezuela move. Then I've been having them on my show all week and giving the president his due to hear what are the detractors saying and what are the supporters saying. And that's up for the audience to make up their mind. If they disagree with me on my stance, that's fine. It's great. No more power to them. But, that's not the job when you're on Fox News. And when I was there, I'll speak for myself, it was very clear to me what the job was, which was to root for it, to defend it, period.
So Cenk, I'm so curious about your thoughts, because I've been saying this about Tucker Carlson on multiple occasions. He's been, openly remorseful for the way that he handled the lead up to the Iraq war as the Iraq war was happening. And now we've got Megyn Kelly rethinking her views on foreign policy. What do you think?
It's an awesome development, a wonderful development. I mean, I didn't think I'd live long enough to say Megyn Kelly talking about the unintended consequences of war and how we should be way more careful and we should actually just protect our homeland instead of going on all of these military adventures. And it's super clear why Tucker and Megyn have turned around on these issues. And we're not the ones hypothesizing about it. They're literally saying it on air. You just heard her say it. We showed you Tucker saying it before. Why? We were right. Fox News is corporate media, and Fox News wants war. They want war because it makes money for the donor class. And so there's a lot of different reasons they want war. Fox News is massively Israel first, neocon. And by the way, to Anna's earlier point, there's almost no difference between the neocons and the neoliberals. So they both represent the elites, the establishment, the uniparty. They both want war. They both support Israel. They both support the defense contractors, the oil companies, etc. The neocons and the neoliberals are here to rob us. And part of the robbery is you got to get people to hate each other. And so there's another secret, wonderful part of this, which is that the Great Awakening is beginning to get people to realize not just that we're getting robbed. And again, guys, it's not, look, we talk a lot about Israel, and we certainly have over the last few years because they were committing a genocide and keep asking for endless money from us. But it's not about Israel. The awakening is about realizing that all of the donor class, the corporations, the foreign governments, all of them are robbing us blind. But there's a second awakening that's happening, which is that it's not just that they're robbing us, they need a distraction. They need us to look away. It's like a magic trick. If you're looking at where they want you to look, you're looking in the wrong place. Because as they're doing the trick with this hand, they're doing something else with this hand, which is reaching into your wallet and robbing you. So the place where they want you to look is the culture wars. Fight all the immigrants, the Somali guy came in, the guy from Honduras just came in. Oh my God, they're robbing you. No, Wall Street's robbing you. Are you crazy? Oil companies getting 35 billion a year, et cetera, right? So that's point number one, that as to why I love this development. Now, secondly, she's right on the substance, Anna. And again, what an amazing moment in American history where the Young Turks, Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson all agree. And we're not agreeing on like the mainstream media would say, oh, the horseshoe theory, they're agreeing on radical things. No, we're agreeing on what the great majority of the American people also believe. Trump won the election.
We don't want war.
Yeah.
Ooh, so radical. Ooh, so dangerous. Yeah, we don't want war. How about that? We want our resources to stay here at home. We want our government to take care of us, the American people, rather than work on behalf of oil companies and private industry and major corporations so they can maximize their profits while we pay for all the risks associated with their businesses.
Yeah, and so all of the left, almost all of the left agrees to that, except our politicians and the people in media. Mainstream media at least. Now a huge percentage of the right agrees with that, and an enormous percentage of independents agree with that. So the whole country is united, and it's not left versus right. It's us versus them, the people in power, the elites, the establishment, et cetera. So lastly, Anna, the thing that they're both concerned about is exactly what we're concerned about when it comes to Venezuela, which is Trump is now high on his own supply. Right, he thinks he's invincible. They did the Iran operation and we didn't lose anyone, and it was efficient. Wonderful tactics. I hate it. I don't want it. I think it's the wrong strategy. But did they carry it out well tactically by the military? Of course they did. Same thing in Venezuela. Unreal how efficient our military is. That doesn't mean that every operation is going to go perfectly. That doesn't mean that you're not going to have to put in ground troops anywhere, right? And it doesn't mean that you could take constant risk, attack any country you like, kidnap any leader, kill anyone you like, and that there's never going to be consequences. No, I'm guaranteeing you right now, we are headed to disaster. Trump thinks he could do anything he wants, and we're this close to a disaster. Well, I could give you a million reasons, including Trump doesn't plan. So they go into a press conference and Rubio and Trump and Hegseth are all saying different things. And then Stephen Miller gets on TV and he says a different thing about who's running the country. Was it to arrest him or was it war? Was it an attack? What's the plan afterwards? Are we going with the opposition or are we going with who's left? They didn't even fully plan that before they attacked a sovereign nation. That's crazy. When you don't, like guys, it's like playing a football game without huddling. If you don't huddle and know what the play is, you're gonna run into a disaster. The other team's gonna annihilate you eventually. Not to say Venezuela or Iran is gonna annihilate us. It's to say that we're playing a dangerous game without having any plans. Lastly, Anna, the Venezuelan tanker that left, in the middle of as it was running away from us, and this is one of the tankers, they asked the Russians for permission to put up the Russian flag and become a Russian tanker. And the Russians said yes. And then we attacked and seized the tanker anyway. That is super dangerous. Luckily, the Russians didn't retaliate. They had pulled a sub next to the tanker. If the sub fires because they view it as a Russian tanker, we're not just in a war with Venezuela, et cetera. All of a sudden, we're in the middle of a war with a nuclear country.
Yep.
No, he's playing with fire. And when you play with fire long enough, you're definitely gonna get burned. And in this case, it's gonna be us, the American citizens, that get burned.
How much of the narrative that is in our news today has been spoon-fed to me by people who are super pro-Israel at all costs? The Fox News of yesteryear, which just has a knee-jerk response to things like Israel, to things like war, is out of touch with today's young Republicans.
Yes.
Today's under 50-year-old conservative men and women are over that bullshit.
There you have a longtime conservative member of the media, Megyn Kelly, questioning whether she was propagandized to support Israel during her time as an anchor on Fox News. And she also took some jabs at Ben Shapiro during this interview on Tucker Carlson's show. But before we get to any of that, Cenk, dying to know your 2 cents.
No, I'm dying for the audience to see the clips, because what she says about Fox News, Israel, and Muslims is stunning. It's an amazing development. Let's watch them.
I want to begin with her, essentially kind of looking back and questioning, wait, why did I have like this unwavering support for Israel? Like, why do I call myself a Zionist, right? And she does, even in the context of this interview, she calls herself a Zionist. Well, she gets into that, but also questions why she's been convinced that Muslims are so evil. So let's take a look at that.
How much of the narrative that is in our news today has been spoon-fed to me by people who are super pro-Israel at all costs, who won't tell the truth about Israel, no matter what it is, and will cancel you if you don't befriend or defriend people who do. And so this whole thing has made me reevaluate. Like, I'm just starting from square one, basically, on Israel right now. And I'm actually day by day taking a much harder look at who are they? What do they do? How do I find real information on what happened in this war in Gaza that I will trust? Because I do know I'm being propagandized by both sides. And how will I make up my own mind? I do start to wonder, like, how much of the very negative messaging about all Muslims, and I've been a part of some of that negative messaging. Don't get me wrong. I'm not wavering from my position that, like, it's not great to have an Islamist running New York City. But how much of the narrative has come from people who are just ardently pro-Israel and need me to hate them?
So that jab at Zoran Mamdani aside, I think that the fact that she's starting to ask these questions is a really good sign. And in fact, what she's going through right now resonates with me, because I feel like I kind of started questioning my own views on certain things a few years ago. And that level of self-questioning, that journey is a very difficult, awkward, uncomfortable journey to undergo. But I think once you make it out the other side, you have a far better perception of what's happening in the country. You have a better grasp of the actual views that your political opponents have. And it actually has a positive impact on your level of optimism, because you realize that some of the propaganda that you've been willing to believe, maybe unwittingly, had a much darker view of people in this country than you would have otherwise believed. So anyway, I'm really curious to see how this personal growth develops when it comes to Megyn Kelly, but I'm really happy that she's asking herself these questions right now.
So amazing development. So look, we talk about the Great Awakening, and now I'm seeing others do it on both sides. I've had a podcast earlier this week, and they're talking about the Great Awakening. And people on the right are talking about the Great Awakening. And the Great Awakening isn't just about Israel, guys. So yes, Israel has done overwhelming propaganda in this country. And once people see it, it's just like the Wizard of Oz. Once you show them the man behind the curtain, not only do they go, oh, that's where it got into my head. These guys have been pumping this into corporate media my whole lifetime, and now I see why they're doing it, etc. You begin to realize that almost all of the traditional media that we watched our whole lives and read our whole lives, and that this applies to me as well as everyone, it's almost all propaganda. So the awakening starts with Israel, but it isn't about Israel. Then you realize, oh wait, why do we all hate Muslims? And I'm not saying the whole country does, but a lot of folks do, and etc. And you see them struggling with it on air in the right. It's amazing. Candace Owens did it, then Tucker Carlson, now Megyn Kelly. And these are the biggest figures on the right in media going, I think we might have been taught to hate Muslims because Israel wanted us to attack them for their benefit. Exactly. I can't believe they figured it out. That's amazing. That is as good a development as I've ever seen. but still it's the tip of the iceberg. The iceberg is when you realize, oh, wait a minute, Fox News and MSNBC and CNN are all corporate media. And as we've been telling you guys here for so long, they don't actually disagree. The only things they disagree over are culture wars and identity politics, the things that drive us apart, get us to fight one another, distract us. So when it gets to, wait, you see her grappling with it right there in the clips, and there's more, where she's like, wait, who's on the board of Fox News? Who are the owners of these corporate media, and what do they want? Do they want us to support Israel? Overwhelmingly, yes. But get beyond that. Oh, they want us to go into more and more wars. Wait, do they also have stock in defense contractors and oil companies, etc.? Who are these forces that are getting us to divide based on ethnicities and race and gender, and who are not serving the American people at all, but doing those news stations as propaganda completely? It's not news at all. It's theater. They're pretending the politicians are honest, and that the billions of dollars that they've gotten from donors don't affect them at all. And that also applies to New York Times, Washington Post, and all the other people pretending to be doing objective news. No, now that we've got independent shows online, Young Turks on the left, Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson on the right, etc. By the way, also Rogan and Tim Dillon and Theo Vaughn and Andrew Schultz, Charlemagne, everyone is waking up at the same time and going, oh, the news hasn't been the news. It's just been marketing for the rich and powerful and for corporations and foreign governments. We've all been lied to. That's the Great Awakening.
Well, I would exclude Rogan from that. Rogan is making a concerted effort to avoid any type of controversial political issue, and he made that very clear during a recent episode where he was hosting Kurt Metzger, and that was really sad to see. But anyway, that's beside the point. I want to move on to the next clip. In this part of the discussion, Megyn Kelly thinks that, the fact that Fox is constantly beating the war drums will ultimately lead to the downfall of Fox News Channel. Take a look.
The Fox News of yesteryear, which just has a knee-jerk response to things like Israel, to things like war, is out of touch with today's young Republicans.
Yes.
Today's under 50-year-old conservative men and women are over that bullshit. They are. They do not want war cheerleaders or Israel cheerleaders. They have healthy skepticism of both. And if Fox doesn't start understanding that and making room with its elbow for that kind of coverage to start not just occasionally being spouted on their network, but become a serious part of the network, the way Roger did after Trump took over the Republican Party and started to sort of shove out the more establishment types, or at least make room for the new MAGA types, they will fail. So they will continue with the Murdoch's mission, or even with the old Roger Ailes mission, which was very, very neocon-y, at their own peril.
In this case, I don't think that Fox News is going to be able to include, anti-war perspectives, anti-interventionist talent, for lack of a better word, because that threatens their profit model, right? So incorporating so-called MAGA people into their programming, I think, is a lot easier. And you can do it in a way that doesn't threaten your revenue the way that essentially inviting anti-war voices would. So ultimately, I don't think that Fox is going to change course when it comes to beating the war drums.
There's no chance Fox News changes course. I mean, look, MSNBC and CNN didn't change course until their parent companies, they didn't change course despite the fact that their parent companies spun them off, meaning that they're dead in the water and have no chance of recovery. And they're just gonna get sold for parts eventually, and they still won't change. And look, the donors have so much power, and these giant corporations have so much power. Kamala Harris, 92% of our own voters wanted her to get out of Israel or to criticize Israel and all these things, and she wouldn't do it. The independents wanted her to do it. She could have picked up a couple of points. She could have won Michigan, etc. And she would rather have lost then change course on Israel or any of the donors. And so that's true also of Fox News and MSNBC and CNN. They're never going to change course. They're just going to drive right over that cliff. And so in the old days, though, I had no hope that they were going to drive over the cliff, because since they were the only game in town, and we're here at the Young Turks for 20 years screaming into the abyss, they're lying. It's the donors. It's all about the money, Lebowski. It's so obvious it's about the money. The number one rule of journalism was supposed to be follow the money. And the New York Times and CNN, et cetera, like, we will never follow the money. If you talk about donors, that's conspiratorial. How dare you? They would literally attack the people giving you the actual facts and the actual news. They still do it today. Like, for example, if you talk about how much money AIPAC gives to our politicians, they'll call you an anti-Semite. They won't say, oh, you're right, 94% of Congress has gotten money from the Israeli lobby. They'll say, shut up, never report that fact, and if you do, we'll ruin your life. That's not news, that's propaganda. So, Anna, I'm over the moon about this. I mean, look, we said that we saw something coming a year, 2 years ago, that this type of thing would happen, where the right wing would begin to move. And I wouldn't have predicted that the move would be this large and this significant and this quick. And it's not about moving to the left, guys. It's about moving to a populist position where you realize that the average American is getting screwed. They've been lied to their whole lives, and it's time to get up and fight back and stop having partisan brain and unite enough to actually fight the guys who have rigged the rules your whole life. And those are the people up top. They're not being under you, they're not to your left, they're not to your right, they're up top, the donor class.
You're right about that. Now, I want to go to one more video. This one I particularly enjoyed because, and it's a little lengthy, but it's worth a listen. This whole notion that you shouldn't just be held responsible for your own statements, but that you should be held responsible for the statements of your friends or your associates or your colleagues. It's the type of culture that I despise, and I've seen plenty of it on the left. I mean, I know that there have been hosts at TYT who have been pressured to condemn and denounce me because some people didn't like my opinion on one thing or the other. How about you leave the other hosts alone? And you got an issue with me, deal with me. But people should be held responsible for what they themselves say. Okay, guilt by association is so utterly lame and middle school. So she talks about the attacks that she's been getting because she refused to denounce Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. And so she takes a jab at Ben Shapiro as well. Let's take a quick look.
And some are calling me an anti-Semite. Why? What did I say? What did I do? Did I step on a rake and say something super anti-Semitic without realizing it? No, it's because I won't defriend you, and I won't condemn and say that Candace Owens is hateful. They want me really, really badly to condemn Candace Owens. And I'm sorry to break it to them, but I am responsible for what I say, not for what anybody else says. I am not Candace Owens's policeman. And by the way, they're kidding themselves that if just one more voice will say something nasty about Candace, she could finally be controlled. Like, how well has that worked so far? But again, the instinct is just to stop her speech, stop it, make her stop it, make Tucker stop saying the things. Well, I have no desire to, and I have no power to. And for that, I was called a coward by Ben Shapiro at the Turning Point event, AmFest in December. Who, by the way, in my last exchange with him, literally said, our friendship, his and mine, is too important to both of us to make it depend on whom else we are friends with and aren't friends with. That is literally the last text I have from Ben Shapiro. The next thing I knew, he was standing on the stage at Turning Point calling me a coward for this very thing.
That is so shady. That is so shady that was his last text to her right before he said what he said on the stage at AmFest, calling her a coward because she refused to denounce and defriend certain people that Shapiro doesn't like.
Yeah.
Cenk, any final thoughts?
Yeah, so among these different donors, the one that does the most cancel culture, honestly, is Israel First. right? And so for guys like Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin, and that doesn't mean everyone who likes Israel or supports Israel or has some sort of connection to Israel, but guys who are Israel-brained, right? They have no friends. They have no allies. They have no allegiance to the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, to Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, none of that. Their only allegiance is Israel. And so if you're pro-Israel, then they love you. You criticize Israel 1%, they despise you, want you to shut up, and they would ruin your career in a second. So they're absolutely obsessed to the point of nearly being deranged. And unfortunately, there's a lot of those folks. They think Israel is the most important thing by a factor of 1 billion. And partly because they have been brainwashed their whole lives into thinking, if you don't support Israel, all Jews are gonna die. So in their mind, by any means necessary, we protect Israel. And it leads to a very radical position. But now, again, tip of the iceberg, more important part is the guilt by association and cancel culture is about making sure that you shut up any dissenters on any issue. So if the powerful want you to shut up, they'll find a way to shut you up. They'll do character assassination first, and both left and right. Elliot Spitzer, sheriff of Wall Street, holding the bankers accountable. All of a sudden, they hire a private detective, track him down, find him with a prostitute, and end his career, right? And then on the right, all of a sudden, Madison Cawthorn or anyone that raises their head and says, well, you know what? Some of the guys on our side are wrong too. Oh, look at this. We've had these pictures of him dressed like this and that the entire time, but never released it. But the minute he criticizes someone we don't want, someone who's powerful, then we're gonna ruin him. Character assassination, character assassination. And then if you say anything where you platform them, talk to them, say anything positive, guilt by association. The whole point of this giant cancel culture machine is to shut Americans up and make sure they bow their heads and follow the rules and the propaganda of the powerful. So don't let them do that to you, whether you're on the right or the left. The First Amendment is freedom of speech, freedom of press, and yes, the freedom to criticize and protest your government. Do not let them take the most American freedom and rights and core issues away from us. We have to keep America as it is, as actually these wonderful things enshrined in our Constitution, and not the propaganda that is given to you by traditional media, the politicians, and all the corrupt who have been trying to brainwash us our whole lives into compliance and obedience with them. Do not be obedient, be an American. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.